History often seems clear, but then a sword in a stone appears, ancient poison is found, a bodiless tomb is discovered, and a city with underground streets is revealed. Then everything unravels. In this video, you'll see real discoveries that defy traditional logic. Hi, my friend. You're on the Kurtop channel. The sword in the stone. Everyone knows the legend of the sword in the stone. A fairy tale, a myth, a symbol of power. But in Italy, there is a place where this myth physically exists. In the Tuscan chapel of Monte Siepi, it has been there for 80 years. A real iron sword sticks out of the stone. Not a copy or a decoration, but an actual blade from the 12th century. A knight, rejecting violence, thrust his sword into a rock to renounce his past. For years, many thought it was a fake for pilgrims. A metal analysis confirmed the blade is medieval, and radar found a cavity under the stone that might be a burial site. The strangest thing is that the story of King Arthur and the sword in the stone appeared only after this Italian legend. And now the question is being asked more and more often. What if it's not a myth? Did the artifact create the myth, or did the myth create the artifact? Traces of artificial poison? We often assume early humans hunted primitively with stones and brute force, but arrows found in South Africa challenge this view. Stone arrowheads about 60,000 years old preserve traces of poison. Not accidental, not natural, but artificially prepared. Analysis showed the presence of toxic alkaloids from the plant Buffon disticha, which is deadly even in small doses. This sap is sticky. You must know how to extract, process, and apply it so it adheres to the stone. The poison wasn't instant, but it made even small wounds fatal. So the hunter just tracked the prey until it collapsed. People not only knew the plants, they understood dosage, timing, and effects. Such knowledge isn't accidental and doesn't vanish in one generation. This technology was used for tens of thousands of years, long before metal cities and writing. And if that's what hunting looked like, then the question arises, what else have we underestimated about people we've gotten used to thinking of as primitive? Funerary bread from ancient Egypt was found in Hatshepsut's tomb, where it had remained for about 3,500 years. These items date back to the New Kingdom era and were placed in the foundation as part of the ritual that accompanied the construction of sacred spaces in ancient Egypt. These offerings, food, vessels, and tools, were sealed at the building foundations, linking them to the gods and the deceased's fate. Bread symbolizes provision, order, and continuous existence. It was not meant to be eaten or considered as a food supply. Its shape and structure have been preserved thanks to isolation and the dry climate. Analysis revealed coarse grain grinding and impurities, typical of bread used for rituals. For decades, people searched for the Inca labyrinth under Cusco, long thought to be a myth. 16th century chronicles describe the underground Chincana tunnels, starting at the Temple of the Sun and stretching below the city. This was long seen as legend until archaeologists used acoustic surveys and ground-penetrating radar instead of excavations. The result turned out to be too precise to ignore. A large network of hollow corridors was found under the city, with a main branch linking the Coricancha Temple to the Sacsayhuaman Fortress. The distance is over a kilometer. The tunnels are about 2.5 meters wide and around 1.5 meters high. This isn't a secret passage, but a full-fledged underground route. The system has branches in different parts of the city. It's like a real street network, only hidden beneath the stone. The Incas first dug trenches, then reinforced them with stone walls and beams, turning the space into a stable structure. Right now, researchers are preparing precise entry points to get inside without damaging the system. All of this points to a well-thought-out infrastructure designed for actual movement and control of space at a time when the city above might have been unsafe. Budin's pipe. In England, archaeologists found a rare Roman-era treasure, including one metal object that was nearly intact. Carnix is a Celtic war trumpet used to signal attacks. These bronze trumpets stood upright and featured animal heads with open jaws, usually a boar. Their sound was frightening and sharp, intended for psychological effect. Only 3 such finds are known in Britain and a few across Europe. This carnix is from the 1st century AD and was found in the region where the Iceni tribe, led by Queen Boudica, rebelled against Rome. Alongside the horn, the hoard included shield bosses, a military standard, and other weapon parts, suggesting a military context instead of a random burial. Romans often took carnixes as trophies and melted them, so few have survived. The horn was extracted as one block, scanned with tomography, then disassembled in the lab. This discovery reveals that ancient wars involved not just force and numbers, but also sound, fear, and shows of power, long before the concept of psychological pressure on the battlefield. Bodiless figurines. In Egyptian Tanis, archaeologists uncovered a tomb that immediately broke the usual logic of burial rituals. Inside were 225 funerary figurines. The Ushabti, meticulously arranged, formed neat rows and geometric star-like patterns. Such a composition requires time, intention, and a clear ritual scenario. But the main element was missing. There was no body in the tomb. Before Egypt's 3rd intermediate period, this seems almost impossible. Ushabti were intended to serve the deceased. In the afterlife, their number, arrangement, and symbolism were always tied to a specific person. More than half of the figures turned out to be female, which further broke with tradition. The symbols of power on the figurines point to Pharaoh Shoshenq III, who ruled in the 9th century before Christ. However, his remains were not found here. The excavations took place in a tense atmosphere. Archaeologists carefully removed the figurines, documenting their position to preserve the ritual structure. Even during clearing, it was clear they had found a completed burial space built according to a pre-planned scheme. The arrangement of the figures, their number, and symbolism indicate a deliberate ritual act carried out in full. Shoshenq III ruled Egypt during a period of constant tension, with fragmented power, regional divisions, and decisions made amid threat and distrust. In this reality, even the pharaoh's death no longer guaranteed peace. Evidence shows the place was prepared beforehand, the ritual was completed, and the body's fate was decided separately. Moving remains, relocating the burial site, or concealing the mummy aligns with a time when security outweighed tradition. In the end, what remained was a tomb filled with symbols, but missing the most important thing, the ruler himself. A discovery in Japan was kept secret for years, and its importance has just been realized. We're talking about fragments of 5th century armor that were discovered several decades ago in the Tokasaki area. A re-examination revealed this is more than decoration. It's part of a protective element. The curved neck plate, made of iron and covered with gilded bronze, has a surface decorated with an open-work image of a dragon. The details are fastened with rivets, the lines are executed with high precision, and the metal itself is crafted as if the item was made for a specific person. Analysis revealed similarities with items from other Kofun period burial mounds, suggesting elite workshops followed a unified artistic style. The weight and construction of the armor make it unsuitable for combat. Researchers believe that such elements were used during funeral ceremonies or diplomatic events. In the visual culture of the East, the dragon was associated with power, protection, and the legitimacy of the ruler. This image here is not decorative, but a symbol of status. The fragments come from large burial mounds of regional rulers. The size of the burials and artifact quality show a hierarchical society with skilled craftsmanship. This is not just a single object, but evidence of how early Japanese power was built through metal, symbols, and form. The oldest doors in Rome are the bronze doors of the Pantheon. They were cast during the reign of Emperor Hadrian around 115 AD and remain in place to this day. Each leaf is about 7.6 meters high and more than 2 meters wide. The structure is solid bronze and designed for precise balance. Its hinges, fittings, and proportions let the doors be used daily without extra mechanisms. The surface shows its age, but the geometry and function are unchanged. These doors were designed as part of the architecture, not just for decoration. Making them needed large casting molds, careful calculations, and substantial resources. The doors continue to serve their function, having been in active use for almost 2,000 years. The Ring of Fidelity. During the excavations near the Danube in present-day Bulgaria, archaeologists unearthed a gold ring that seems too personal for an archive and too alive for a display case. It dates to the late 2nd or early 3rd century AD. This is a Roman ring of marital fidelity, an item that accompanied marriage not in a symbolic sense, but in a legal and social one. A couple is engraved on the oval plate. The simple image conveys the idea of union as a fact. Two people are fixed in metal, with the plate soldered to the rim and parallel grooves on the sides. This technique is common in fine Roman jewelry. In Rome, women usually wore such rings as symbols of status, legal marriage, and family. Sometimes such rings also served as personal seals, meaning they were objects used to literally sign everyday life. The context of the place adds scale. We're discussing Bononia, an ancient city that evolved from a military fort into a key trade hub on the Danube routes. Nearby are objects from various eras, including a Byzantine lead seal from the early 11th century. In this region, shifting power and borders made the river both a bustling marketplace and a risky boundary. A family of warriors from the 9th century was found in Hungary, where archaeologists uncovered 3 warrior graves from 900 to 930. Initially appearing as typical early Middle Ages burials, analysis revealed a detail that changed this view. All 3 were related through the male line, likely a father and 2 sons. The burial inventory shows high status: a saber, bow with quiver, decorated harness, silver and gold clothing elements, and many coins. One young man died at 17 or 18, another even younger, and the eldest at around 30. All 3 mainly ate meat, which confirms their belonging to the military elite. The coins found in the graves come from northern Italy and date back to the reign of King Berengar. This aligns with the Hungarian military campaigns to the west, where the family likely got their loot. The burial shows a strong military lineage tied to origin, campaigns, and power. The weapons, jewelry, and inventory suggest elite status and involvement in more campaigns. The matching dates, male line kinship, and burial style reveal a family part of the early states military. On the banks of the River Wear, not far from modern Sunderland, archaeologists discovered a concentration of objects that immediately changed the status of the site. Over 800 whetstones, used by Roman soldiers and craftsmen to sharpen weapons and tools, have been found in the soil and river. For the British Isles, this amount is unprecedented. The stones are layered, mostly damaged, with cracks and chips matching processing stages. Geological analysis showed that the raw material was extracted from sandstone on the northern bank of the river. After the initial extraction, the blanks were transported across the water, where further processing took place. In the same area, 11 stones were found. Such a quantity indicates regular river traffic and the loading of heavy cargo. The river linked the site to coastal routes, distributing products throughout the Roman province. The find shows this site was a production center within Rome's military and economic system. There was infrastructure here that supplied the army with expendable but essential tools. Hunger stones in the hand of the Elbe River near the Czech town of Děčín are boulders with inscriptions carved into them. They appear only during severe droughts, when water levels reach critical lows. These stones are known as hunger stones, a kind of marker of climate disasters that have been used in Central Europe for centuries. Dates and short phrases are carved on the surface. These marks showed when the river grew shallow, navigation ceased, and crop failure became certain for riverside towns. This led to higher prices, supply issues, and hunger. The stones date from the early 15th to the late 19th century. These are not decorations, but practical reminders of recurring crises. The stones stayed with each generation, adding new marks to continue the count. Similar objects exist elsewhere in Europe. They document the link between climate, economy, and lives without interpretation or commentary. The stones remain silent most of the time and appear only when conditions become extreme. This is direct evidence of how nature entered history through the water level and the inscribed date. Red mystical spheres. In southern Alberta's Red Rock Coulee area, dozens of stone spheres are scattered across the steppe, far apart. They look as if they were deliberately placed across the landscape. Some have diameters over 2.5 meters, weigh tons, are nearly perfect circles, and their rich reddish-brown surfaces stand out against the light soil. These formations formed millions of years ago when minerals in underground water cemented around solid cores in sandstone. As wind and rain eroded the soft rock over time, the dense cores became exposed. Iron in the minerals oxidized, giving the stones their color. Inside the spheres, you often see concentric layers and cracks radiating outward. One sphere is split nearly in half vertically, revealing its layers. Geologists use these objects to illustrate usually hidden underground processes. The area is still hard to access, lacking tourist infrastructure or nearby roads. This maintains isolation and boosts the visual effect. The stones lie motionless, not forming lines or circles, each in its own place like frozen fragments of a long completed process. These spheres aren't linked to human activity, but often draw attention due to their shape. They demonstrate the complex, precise structures geology forms without intelligence. The most mystical mountain, Roraima, rises above the jungles of the Guiana Highlands to almost 2,500 meters. Its summit is a flat plateau with sheer cliffs dropping down hundreds of meters. Roraima's cliffs nearly isolate it from the world. Only one slope allows ascent, and reaching the summit takes several days. Roraima's geological age is about 2 billion years, making it one of the planet's oldest preserved surfaces. The plateau's rocks formed long before complex life or land plants appeared. Everything that happens here today unfolds on a foundation that existed even before the Earth as we know it. Frequent rains shape the summit's environment. Water runs off the edges. Waterfalls vanish into cracks, nourishing the soil and forming a closed ecosystem. Here are plants and microorganisms found nowhere else, including carnivorous plants, frogs, and insects. They evolved in complete isolation, following their own path of development. For the region's indigenous peoples, Roraima has always been powerful. In their myths, the mountain is a remnant of the world tree, a piece of the ancient order broken long ago. These ideas did not arise from geology, but from a sense of remoteness and scale. The plateau is perceived as a separate world by rule. Modern science describes Roraima through plate tectonics, erosion, and climate. But even with precise explanations, there remains a sense of a space that has outlasted almost everything. Continents shifted, oceans disappeared, species appeared and went extinct, yet the summit continued to exist, changing so slowly that human time here almost loses its meaning. The bronze heads of Ife. The bronze heads from Ife were created between the 12th and 15th centuries in what is now Nigeria. These sculptures were created with the lost wax casting method and are notable for their precise facial proportions. You can see fine lines, repeating scars, decorations, and headdress elements. Holes atop the heads suggest crowns or other authority symbols were installed. Most researchers link these heads to rulers or elite ritual images. Their production required temperature control, high-quality alloys, and complex molds. The finds demonstrate advanced metallurgy, which existed in Ife well before European contact. These heads weren't modern portraits, but reflected a person's status and sacred role. The most unique castle on the planet, Safra Castle, is located on a rocky cliff in the Caldera Mountains in the Spanish province of Guadalajara. The plateau rises 1,400 meters and can only be reached by a narrow path. This location was strategically important even before medieval walls existed. Evidence shows humans lived here since the Bronze and Iron Ages, indicating this area was used long before the Visigothic fortress. Later, Muslim rulers used this elevation for observation and defense. The stone castle's familiar form was built in the 12th and 13th centuries, during the era between the Christian kingdoms and Muslim territories. The architecture fits the landscape, with walls and towers built into the rock and minimal decoration. After the Reconquista ended, Safra's importance faded, and the fortress was abandoned by the late 15th century in the 20th century. The castle was in a ruined state until it was purchased by a private owner who spent decades restoring it. Safra is now widely recognized due to Game of Thrones, which used it as the model for the Tower of Joy. The fortress shows how a place can remain significant for thousands of years, despite changing eras and cultures. The Doomsday Glacier, Thwaites Glacier, is located in West Antarctica. Its area is comparable to that of Great Britain, and it holds a massive amount of ice that is directly connected to global sea levels. It is called the Doomsday Glacier because of the role it plays in the stability of the entire West Antarctic ice sheet. For a long time, it was believed that the main threat was related to melting from below. Warm ocean currents erode the glacier at the point where it meets the seafloor, gradually weakening its grip. But satellite data from recent years has shown another process developing. At the same time, long cracks have begun to form inside the glacier. We're not discussing surface fractures, but a network of internal ruptures extending for tens of kilometers. Their total length has more than doubled quickly. Cracks form in high-stress areas where the ice weakens. The destruction occurs inside the mass, not at the edge. This alters the glacier's behavior. Rather than sliding slowly, it begins losing stability in pieces. The shelf, once a support that blocked ice from moving into the ocean, is slowly weakening. The volume of ice associated with Thwaites is equivalent to a rise in global sea level of about 65 centimeters. But its significance goes beyond just one number. It holds back neighboring ice basins. If it loses stability, they will also start moving, increasing the total contribution to several meters. Satellite observations record an acceleration of ice flow and changes in its geometry. Models show that the process could enter an irreversible phase within a few decades. The timing is unknown, but the dynamics have already been recorded and confirmed by independent measurements. The gold intimate ornament belongs to the Senu culture, which existed in the north of present-day Colombia before the arrival of the Spanish. It is made of high-purity gold and was intended to be worn in the intimate area, a fact that puzzled researchers for a long time, but today is seen as part of a complex system of bodily symbolism in Senu society. The ornaments were more than decorations. They indicated status, age, and life stage. Gold held a unique role here. It wasn't seen as currency or wealth, but linked to the sun, fertility, and renewal. Jewelry placed in areas associated with procreation emphasized the owner's vitality and social maturity. These items are often found in noble burials, indicating their ritual importance. The manufacturing technology indicates a high level of metallurgy, lost wax casting, precise symmetry, and fine movable elements. These ornaments were made individually and likely stayed with a person for life. After death, they were buried with them to reinforce their status in the afterlife. A bucket from another world. In the ship burial at Oseberg in Norway, archaeologists found a wooden bucket. The story could have ended there if the bucket hadn't been so unique. It was made of yew, decorated with bronze details, and had a small figurine of a seated person with crossed legs. Because of this pose, the item quickly got the unofficial name Bucket with Buddha, but it has nothing to do with Buddhism. Studies have shown that the bronze figurine was made in the tradition of Celtic monastic workshops of the British Isles or Ireland. Similar images are found in early medieval decorative art and probably go back to more ancient ritual motifs. The bucket was about 100 years older than the burial and had a history before being placed in the grave. Notably, it was empty. Yew wood is poisonous and not suitable for storing liquids, which makes its everyday use doubtful. Archaeologists believe that the item had ceremonial significance. Coins with a kraken. These silver coins were minted in Syracuse, one of the most influential cities in Greece. The octopus on these coins was the symbol of the city, which lived by the sea, controlled trade routes, and maintained a strong fleet. Syracuse dominated trade routes, ports, and the fleet, with the sea as their main source of wealth and power. The coins were minted with exceptional attention to detail. Each tentacle was crafted separately. The composition was balanced, and the image was adapted to the shape of the blank. This reflects artistic culture and a political message. Money was intended to inspire respect and trust. These coins circulated widely beyond Sicily, spreading the city's symbolism further. The octopus also had mythological associations, a creature capable of holding, grasping, and controlling. For a maritime power, it was a vivid image of influence. The Archer's Ring. In ancient Hasankeyf in the southeast of modern Turkey, archaeologists found a rare item associated with power in the court. This archer's thumb ring is made of ivory and adorned with pearls, turquoise, and silver. These rings protected the hand while shooting a bow, but this piece clearly served more than a practical purpose. The find was uncovered in the southeastern part of the Great Palace complex, linked to the Artuksid dynasty that ruled the area in the 12th and 13th centuries. The material is self-explanatory. Ivory was expensive and hard to obtain, pearls and turquoise required trade connections, and the silver inlays were crafted with great precision. This is neither training nor field equipment. In medieval Islamic and Turkic tradition, archery was part of courtly culture, associated with discipline, nobility, and the right to rule. Decorated rings were worn at ceremonies and public events, where each piece of clothing signaled status. So far, archaeologists haven't found an archer's ring like this, inlaid with pearls. Jewelry that's always concealed. Menuki is a pair of metal elements that were placed under the wrapping of a Japanese sword handle. Their main function was practical, to improve the grip of the hand on the weapon. However, over time, Menuki became an important part of the sword's visual and symbolic design. This particular piece is made in the shape of a shishi, a mythical lion dog that entered Japanese culture from China, along with Buddhist iconography. The shishi was seen as a protector, warding off evil and bringing luck. Adding its image to a weapon increased the sword's sacred value and raised the owner's status. The work stands out for its detailed curls, mane, tense posture, and expressive face. Such menuki were made for high-ranking samurai and were often commissioned from renowned craftsmen. It was not intended to be shown to outsiders. Most of the time, the ornament was hidden under the wrapping, making the item a personal, almost intimate symbol of the warrior's connection to his weapon and the protective power of the image. A talisman with a phallus. In Gela, Sicily, archaeologists found an object that's difficult to picture being used. A 13-centimeter bone stylus was found in the 5th century before Christ cultural layer. Such items were usually used by potters to draw lines on wet clay, but this one was clearly not made for hands covered in clay. The bone stylus is so beautifully decorated that it's more for display than use. At the top there is a male head that investigators associate with Dionysus, and below a phallic symbol carved without any hints or embarrassment. Today this would be kept in a drawer labeled 18+, but for ancient Greeks it wasn't taboo. It was a symbol of protection and fertility, understood wordlessly. These images were placed in homes, workshops, and entrances as talismans and to seek favor from forces influencing work outcomes. The material also reveals the item's purpose. Bone is fragile, and the delicate carving can't withstand frequent use with wet clay. This stylus didn't scratch the form, it preserved the process. It was made nearby in a workshop, but never used. This desk screen is a Chinese status item, dating to the late period of Imperial China, and was used in the study of a scholar, official, or member of the nobility. It is made of dark green jade, set in a carved wooden stand decorated with lacquer and inlay. The surface of the jade is covered with hand-applied hieroglyphs. Such screens were not used for privacy, but rather as objects of contemplation on or near the writing desk. The stone's text could be philosophical quotes, poems, or reminders of duty and discipline. Jade in Chinese culture symbolized purity, resilience, and moral strength, qualities essential for an educated person. Making this item needed several craftsmen, a stone carver, calligrapher, lacquerer, and carpenter, and served as a status symbol. An encounter with them ended in trouble. Northern peoples have a legend about the existence of Svak, and meeting them almost always ended in misfortune. The Nenets called them Sikirtia, those who dig burrows. According to legend, they were a short people who lived in the hills. Their homes had rooftop entrances, and they only emerged at night or in dense fog. During the day, they were impossible to see, even up close. Random encounters are fragmented. Hunters may see a small woman, hear odd noises, or find a forgotten object. According to legend, Sihirtia, a frightened girl, fled and left a small bag. Anyone who touched it later died from illness. These stories warned people not to get involved with Sihirtia. They were once thought to be mythical tundra spirits, but archaeology raised doubts. At Mamayev Cape in Yamal, a pre-Nanette settlement was found. Graves contained dozens of metal items, jewelry, knives, and dishes. The Nanettes didn't work with metal, and the skeletons found were from people shorter than today's northerners, though not dwarfs. Their specialization was especially strange. Wooden models of pickaxe-like tools were found in the tundra. Since farming isn't possible here, the pickaxes must have been for extracting mammoth ivory. The tusks could have brought wealth to Europe, as mammoth powder was seen as medicine, and the tusks were highly prized. It's no coincidence that in legends, the Sihirtia were depicted with bullhorns. That's what the Nenettes called tusks, emerging from the ground. Over time, mentions of the Sihirtia disappear. Scientists link this to the Little Ice Age and migrations. Maybe the tribe went to Taimirs or assimilated. Some believe the Sihirtia and Chudbeloglazaya are the same people. The legend is not a fairy tale, but a warped memory of people who lived and looked differently, vanished, and left only fear and traces in the permafrost. That's why I love archaeology. It challenges what we think we know about the past and shows history wasn't always like we believe. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Goodbye, everyone.